This podcast is about you. Are you ready? Take a moment and ask yourself, do I know the truth? And do I even care? Well, if you care at all, we have something for you. Stick around. We're a podcast that does not ignore the truth about life, people, or God. Larry Kutzler has been a pastor, a Bible commentator, a radio and podcast producer, and now is your host. This is a podcast you won't forget.
Well, as usual, thank you for joining us for the City Sides podcast. Today is our final installment of the series called The Fallen. Our guest today, again, is Tove Rose. He's a journalist, Messianic Jewish believer. He is an author. He is an entrepreneur. He's been doing a lot of research into our theme called The Fallen, and we had previously 4 podcasts recorded and aired. And Tove is finishing up on the 5th edition. So again, thanks for joining us. I want to thank Dr. J. Christianson, who is the host of the Truth Barista program, which originally aired this series. And we want to also thank our guest, Tove Rose. Again, thanks for joining us on the City Sides podcast. Dr. J, we have a guest with us. He's been with us many times before, and we're talking about what we're calling the series The Fallen. And this is episode 5. And the previous 4 are absolutely outstanding. And we want to encourage everyone to go listen to them and pass them along to their church leaders, because there's some stuff in here that I don't think personally, as a former pastor, that I was ever trained to understand or implement. Right, Dr. J?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I went through this type of training to a degree back in 1994 when I first moved into pastoral ministry. And they were laying down the law as far as, if you do this, these are the consequences. This is what to look for. Be careful screening people, because you don't want pedophiles taking up positions in Sunday schools for children, because pedophiles gravitate toward wherever children are gathered. So we had this kind of training, but in recent days, with even more people falling in ministry leaders, we had Jimmy Baker and Jimmy Swaggart in the 80s. But now it just seems like big name after big name is falling due to financial embezzlement, mismanagement, abuse of authority, sexual abuse, all sorts of stuff. And we really want to pull Tove in to talk about dealing with the fallen. Now, when we talk about the fallen, no, it's not the fallen angels or the Nephilim. We're talking about leaders who have allowed themselves to fall ethically, morally, and how that has affected the victims. That was last week's episode, and how to help them. Okay, so how do we address the leaders here? And you can go ahead and name names, but just make sure when you do that these are cases that are well known, being adjudicated, etc., so we're not casting aspersions on anybody.
You don't want to say Dr. J. Christianson or Larry Kutzler. Leave those names out.
Yeah, that's right. We're not accusing them or saying certain things. These are allegations unless they've actually been adjudicated, so we'll mind those parameters. So go ahead, Tove. Let's talk about it. The proper ways to address fallen leaders and restoration.
The Bible is really clear. 1 Timothy 5, 19 through 20, Titus chapter 1, verses 7 through 9, Proverbs 28, verse 13. Those are just a couple of the verses that address leaders. So public rebuke is mandated for sinning elders. Public rebuke is mandated.
So what you're saying is, when you stand up and you say, this and such leader has fallen, or it goes into social media and they've done this and this and this, you want to talk a public rebuke? This is a worldwide social media public rebuke, but you do need the official public rebuke of that organization. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, and.
Okay, keep going.
So when it comes, so there's if an organization has a proper system set up to hear allegations, to deal with allegations, and the elder or leader is found wanting, and the allegations are true, there should be a public rebuke before that congregation, before that ministry, in that denomination or association, of that elder. When
Okay.
those things fail, social media is perfectly legally acceptable as it's protected by whistleblower laws at both the state and the federal level for a reason. It's when those systems fail or are non-existent.
Okay. Give us an example of a recent public rebuke on an organizational level and on a social media level.
Take a look at Robert Morris and what happened with him. The situation at Gateway Church Dallas, compounded by years of other pastors and leaders knowing his situation of raping a 12-year-old, which is in court right now. It hasn't been fully decided, so we'll say alleged raping.
Got to be fair.
And the pastors and leaders who were involved, who knew early on, who were part of his board, part of his mentorship circle, some of them have been forced to leave their churches now, even in the last week, because it was proven that they lied and misrepresented what they knew. Cindy Clemshire, kept pronouncing her name wrong. I apologize, Cindy. Had gone several times to try and get justice for what happened to her, had been rebuked and systems set up to prevent her from getting justice. And those systems were to protect Robert Morris's public reputation, denying her justice. She had no other choice because all of her attempts to do things internally came to no fruition at all for justice and restitution. So she finally told her story to somebody publicly. It was released on social media.
Okay. And I know who that is.
And that got the traction that was needed for the Attorney General of Oklahoma, where the crime happened, to bring suit against Robert Morris and bring him to the beginning of the justice process that he's in now.
Right. And the alleged crime is one that does not have a statute of limitations, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then that also brings in the elders who knew but failed to report as mandatory reporters. So now they're dragged into it.
That's right.
And so the minute they found out about it, let me put it this way. What would you have done in that situation, being an elder, not knowing anything about Robert Morris's past, but being informed of it? How would you have handled it?
I would have immediately gone to the police and filed a police report. But that's because I know better.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to cover something up in my own life.
And what's astounding to me is it's just been revealed that elders after elders knew of his past, but because they assumed, oh, that's already been covered and he's already talked to the family, that I guess it's okay. But I'm thinking, what are you thinking? This is a crime if true.
That's right.
You are a mandatory reporter. I don't know if Oklahoma has that. I assume they have mandatory reporting guidelines.
Texas certainly did, where Robert Morris set up his ministry.
Exactly. They should have at least reported it there.
And that's the issue right there. You just hit it. If a state has a mandatory reporting law, what's the key word there? Mandatory. It's not up to you as a pastor, leader, elder, overseer, whatever, to question what the word mandatory means.
You know, I've been through a lot of this myself with different elders and board members. And here's the problem, that board members or elders, they do not have the proper onboarding process. They do not understand that my responsibility is to protect the ministry. That means all of the ministry, not just the senior pastor or the executive director. And boards constantly are yes stampers, right? They just stamp the approval and they move on. Yeah. That is that has to change, Tove. That has to change. And I think these laws and these cases are going to make that happen.
Well, and even in the case of mandatory reporting is required by law, many of the states still allow non-disclosure agreements to cover crimes.
Please unpack that one.
Cover crimes. The state of Missouri and the state of Texas have now, because of Cindy with the Robert Moore case, and several people with Carnacook. I'm still pronouncing it wrong. Sorry. They are a children's youth retreat ministry where there have been lots of allegations of sexual abuse, especially of minors. And then survivors of Mike Bickle and IHOP KC, not just Mike Bickle specifically, testifying both before the state House and Senate committees in Texas and Missouri. Both cases, those laws were passed and signed by the governors to remove non-disclosure agreement protections for those who have been sexually harmed in their states.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Now we know from the Bible that we have a biblical framework rooted in accountability. We have the legal system that's catching up and, actually causing the church to catch up with it. Mm-hmm. So now we have both the spiritual and the legal side that's starting to come together in an even greater fashion because they've been around. I mean, we've had these types of things available for 2,000 years, within the church's denominations, hierarchies, and things. But now, because of these high profile cases, they're actually gelling these things together, which is great. Okay, so let's talk about how does a fallen leader find mercy in this? How do you deal with that fallen leader to the point where they get mercy? They're not denied mercy. They're not denied justice either. And then how do you deal with it?
There should always be room for true mercy. Now, who defines what mercy is?
Good question.
Okay, first of all, Scripture just defines what mercy is. Mercy, as defined by Scripture, and I'm not going to give you a specific verse, I'm going to kind of gel many different verses into this. Mercy is seeking the best restoration of somebody who has caused harm to another.
Okay.
The best and appropriate. So if somebody in the Hebrew Scriptures, in the Old Testament, if somebody committed murder, even accidentally, God had cities of refuge that they could escape to. That was mercy.
Now, and there's an important point there, and I don't know if I'm jumping on you there.
No.
In those cities of refuge, the perp could find protection against the vindictive person acting on behalf of the slain person, correct?
Correct.
Until when?
Until the high priest, alive when the crime happened, died.
Okay, now there's an interesting thing there because the rabbis say, why does the Lord say that? And it's like, well, if maybe there's something wrong with the high priest that affected the whole nation that allowed this thing to happen. Right. But what I like about it is the cities of mercy protect the perp from getting unduly slain before they get a judicial hearing.
Exactly.
And in the town that he flees to, the elders must get all the evidence. If the guy is guilty of anything deserving death or punishment, they bring him out to the gate and say, here you go, deal with him.
That's right. That's right.
On the other hand, if he is innocent, they keep him in the town to protect him in case the guy who's acting in retribution, in case he gets out of hand emotionally and kills him and winds up killing an innocent man. Right. So there is that type of thing today that you can't just bring a false charge against somebody. It has to be adjudicated properly, both in the church and both in the legal system. And there are protections for that leader, but yet if they are guilty, they are guilty.
That's right. And there should be some sort of legal accountability for that guilt.
And when you talk about mercy, Tove, let me just put it in this perspective. If God gives us mercy, do people have to give us that same mercy? For example, God can forgive us. It's wiped clean. But restoration is a different thing when you're putting people back into place that are dealing with people, again, that you initially had some kind of immoral act toward. I mean,
yes,
you get mercy from God, but it doesn't necessarily automatically, or maybe it never should be, that person should be restored. Yes or no?
I would say I agree with that completely. And that's why the secular world, if you are a doctor who takes advantage of a patient or a coworker that you have some sort of position over or authority over, or a teacher like in a university takes advantage of a student or a coworker, and it's what starts off as alleged and then it's proven true. There have to be consequences, and in the secular world those consequences are that person never gets to work in that field again or anything like it.
Okay. Now, under the allegation thing, if an allegation comes up, is it absolutely okay to automatically remove a pastor or a ministry leader from ministry? Or do you allow them to continue on under the umbrella that they are being investigated?
I'll take the secular world example again because it's more righteous than what happens in most churches,
Okay.
which is sad, but true.
So your viewpoint on that one is if an allegation comes up, take them out of leadership for a period of time while it's being
While it's being
investigated.
investigated. Yep.
Well, and they do the same thing. If a cop discharges his gun, what do? They take his gun and they, put him on administrative leave until they can
Exactly.
sort it all out.
Exactly right.
And that I don't have a problem with. There's a little part of me being a pastor saying, and being the butt of a false allegation at one time, going, okay, do I have an appeal to whether that person's allegation is true or not? Because if I step down, having been the only pastor in a rural church, that church goes pastorless, in which case I probably would have called a denomination and say, this is what we're going through. Could you send somebody to fill the pulpit for me?
Right.
So that's how I guess I'd square the circle on that.
Yes, exactly. And that's the way it should be handled in a righteous situation.
Okay, so then once that happens, you refer allegations to the legal authorities and trained investigators. Why would you go outside of the church instead of keeping it in-house?
Well, if the church doesn't have a system that's legally set up correctly to handle these kinds of allegations in a way that's victim-centered, because 92 to 98% of victims are telling the truth. So the default mode should be the victim's telling the truth. Let's investigate it and confirm it.
Okay. Once all that's been worked through for restoration, I noticed you had written here, restoration only after one, verified repentance. You look at it and this person realizes what they did wrong and they've changed their life. And I would add accountability in that as well. Number two, a professional evaluation, whether that person is likely to offend again.
Just like a police officer shooting a gun.
Exactly. And number three, and I think this one, in keeping with where you're at, victim input, ensuring no premature forgiveness. Do you have any examples of that lately?
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. So we've talked about him previously, Dr. Michael Brown. There was an independent investigation commissioned and paid for by his board that found all the allegations true. And then several of his board members left. An outside organization was formed of elders to take a look at this stuff and review it. And they came to a different conclusion and restored him to ministry immediately.
Okay, so we don't have to get into this and rejudge it, but it makes me wonder, it's like, what did they find secondarily that overruled the previous? You've done all these things. Is this the church internal mercy thing and it's no big deal thing or whatever?
It could be. It could be that some of these people who were the elder board were also friends of Michael Brown and had longstanding relationships. We don't know what their biases are. Were they truly independent?
That's true, because conflict of interest.
That's right. And we could tell by the statements of those who were victimized and their survivors that they were not really consulted concerning the final decision, like Scripture says they should be in the case of the Gibeonites.
How does the victim feel about all this process?
Clarify what you're asking.
In Michael Brown's situation, I'm curious about how does the victim feel or victims feel that justice has been served and it's worth restoring him? I haven't heard anything about that.
I've seen the videos, the interviews that the primary victim, and the survivor, husband and daughter of the other victim, case of Michael Brown's situation, that they do not feel that justice was done at all.
Can anything be done to resolve the situation down to everybody's satisfaction?
My opinion would be that there would have to be some sort of legal thing that would have to happen. And I don't know what that process is. That's not my expertise.
One of the things that I have noticed over the years is that ministries are businesses. And so when we're talking about a Michael Brown being removed, he's being removed from his livelihood and his business, not just his ministry, but his business. So that enters in, doesn't it, Tove? That's not a justification for keeping him, but it's the impetus of wanting to stay. This is mine. I built it. I'm making money from it, livelihood from it. So does that play a part? Should it?
Absolutely, it plays a part. If you have done something as a profession for decades, what else are you going to do as a profession to support the lifestyle that you've created? That is definitely a situation that's real. But you know what? The response is real simple. What happens when somebody rapes somebody else, goes to jail, they're now considered a felon, they serve their time, they get out. Are they allowed to go back into similar professions after that?
No. There are definitely restrictions placed on them.
That's exactly what Christians in general, evangelicals, Pentecostals, Baptists, especially Southern Baptists, what they've been through in the last 5 years. The Catholic Church. This is the question all believers should be asking is, why are we not doing it the way the secular world's doing it, which is more righteous than what we're doing?
See, that's the key. They're acting more righteous than what we're doing. We should actually be above that, which for a pastor who's concerned, if I do this, I lose my profession. The answer to that is, you signed up for this. If you do this, that's part of it. You will lose your profession. And that's why I like the rabbi's take on it. It's going, a rabbi teaching in a synagogue should have two jobs, his teaching job and a secular job, because you don't want to use the Torah as a shovel, as they say.
That's right. Isaiah 22, 15 through 24.
Okay, summarize.
There is this prideful head of a household. He's not the owner of the house. He is the steward of the household. His name is Shevna. He builds himself the most beautiful tomb and misuses the funds, the resources that are entrusted to him but are not actually his. God insists that he is fired from his job and replaced with somebody more righteous. That is the model.
Well, if you signed up for it, it comes with high standards. Sorry, that's just the way it works. Okay, so let's talk about preventative measures. You brought up some things that I found very fascinating. Preventing clergy abuse requires systemic reform to dismantle barriers like clergy penitent privilege.
Yes. So in judgments, courts, there is an assumed privilege because of the separation of church and state, and because churches from the beginning of this country's foundations have been considered independent, representing God. So there is a clergy penitent privilege, so that even if you are harmed as an employee of a church or a ministry, courts will in general say, oh, we're not going to touch that because of clergy penitent privilege.
In cases I've heard of, well, that's a church issue.
Exactly. And that needs to be addressed. 16 states have been addressing those.
Hence the mandatory reporting.
Exactly.
The non-disclosure agreement issues.
It needs to become a national issue. Every state needs to pass laws to remove that privilege that allows crimes to continue that are otherwise properly prosecuted in the secular world.
Well, even under clergy penitent privilege, if something like this blows out, they should be able then have a mechanism to expand it so that a closed courtroom or a closed group can explore those issues without it violating a general disclosure. I think that's a fair middle ground, and I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But
I agree.
if something goes wrong, it has to be disclosed. It has to be addressed because, and I like the way you put this, the moral weight of tolerating sin, as Balch notes, is profound. To tolerate such things when they should be condemned is to give silent assent to them.
That's
Boom.
right. Exactly. That's Romans 1:32, Ezekiel 3:18 through 19.
Yep. Okay, so when you're talking about this, we need independent oversight.
Mhm.
And by the way, independent means outside of that church body, or maybe even outside of the denominational boundary.
Exactly. That's key.
I know some denominations that are, sad to say, family owned and operated right now because of the big family names.
Yep.
So we need the independent oversight. We need mandatory reporting laws expanded to all states. We need protocols for transparency,
That's right.
which I think is dealing with the clergy penitent issues, and training programs.
Training programs are key. That's really what's missing. If secular businesses can institute training programs, why can't churches? And
Exactly. In fact, we should be excelling, and I'm not saying more strict and brutal than secularism. We should be exceeding in those standards in the church.
Yes.
And once again, if you aspire to leadership, remember, you're signing up for this gig. If you don't want to be held to that standard, go find another job. Minister without a paycheck and under accountability of a local group.
If a minister has credibly been accused, it's credible. Let's give them the grace to be restored to the body of Messiah, but not to get to any kind of leadership again.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Right. So in other words, restore them to fellowship and participation, but not necessarily to the level or responsibility of service they held before, because they did violate that.
Yeah.
And will probably violate it again.
Right.
Well, and that's one of the things
Statistically.
in closing here that really stuck out to me in my training in 1993, 94, is they were saying if somebody offends sexually, the percentage is extremely high they will offend again.
That's right.
And that's just a fact.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Well, one of the things that I have noted over the years in my experience is that we need to do away with creating personality-driven ministries. The gospel is about one personality, and it's not the messenger. And so we have a problem, and we need to start looking at that, because these personality-driven folks are very charismatic. They've got lots of money and influence, and it's a recipe for disaster. Well, we've come to a conclusion of a fifth program of The Fallen, and we have 4 other episodes. We want people to go back and listen to them all and pass them on to your church leaders, friends, family, and so forth. Tove Rose, give us your address again if people are really saying, I like this Tove Rose guy. How do they get a hold of you?
Well, you can find my access to my articles, my other websites, my classes, my books at toverose.com. Toverose, TOVROSE.com. And if anybody's interested in business services, I do public relations, media relations, provide resources for customers as well for businesses that want to grow at c2rmarketing.com.
It's easy to remain neutral on the issues of our day, yet long periods of neutrality will produce a silence. Author Dietrich Bonhoeffer once said, "Silence in the face of evil is evil itself. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." Every week on the City Sites podcast, we break the silence on issues you need to know. Sign up for a podcast feed at citysitesurbanmedia.com.
This isn't the end. It's only the beginning of your journey to trust God for the truth you never want to lose. We can help. Log on to citysitesurbanmedia.com today. Remember, there's only one truth and only one God, and you should know them both.